Namaskar. Inspired talks of Swami Vivekananda. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suray Sachit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Netapaharine. We had been discussing what Swamiji had told his disciples on Sunday, July 21st. See, Swamiji was discussing yoga. He was talking about yoga. And it's a very interesting section because yoga is being seen and explained as a way to spirituality. When we say way to spirituality, you might say, well, every religion, every path takes you to spirituality. Well, they do take, but there are circuitous routes. For example, rituals. Rituals are just philosophy in action. However, the problem of rituals is that it drags you down. Unless you are extremely conscious about what exactly it is meant for, it can drag you down, it can tie you up. Beauty of Swamiji is that he's the prophet of freedom. He's the prophet of spirituality. And naturally, again, same question will come to your mind. Well, every prophet is like that. No doubt. Prophets are like that. However, let's forget other religions. Let's confine to Hindu religion. You know that the Vedas and Upanishads, Gita, these are these are the main books of spirituality for the Hindus. Then there are Puranas. But as humans evolve and as the human society progresses, more and more knowledge is acquired, and there is more input of data, more inflow of data. And this continuous flow of data, particularly say in the present times, flow of data has become so huge that we need to we need to bring everything on one single platform. Now, if you go to the Upanishads or if you go to the Gita, you will have to interpret the entire thing in such a way that all the new things that we have been learning from different religions, different philosophies, etc., can be brought on one single platform. But then that will be an interpretation. Swami Vivekananda was a prophet. He was not an interpreter. Everything he says, that is Ved. That is Ved. And that's why we quote him. When we quote him, we mean to say that here is an authoritative statement. Related ideas need to be compared against this particular idea. That means what Swamiji has said. Swamiji begins with this: be unattached. And that is the key to spirituality. Whatever religion you are practicing, whatever path you take up, be unattached. Be unattached with the world. We had a senior monk who used to say laughingly, oh, monks are so detached that they get detached to spiritual practices also. Modern India, modern Hindus, They are so detached that they have become detached from their own religion. Not that. This detachment is from the senses. And the goal is to get detached from the mind. Now, what Swamiji has done in this particular talk is that he has made yoga as a way of spirituality in such a way that yoga doesn't remain confined only to the yogis, and yoga can now be practiced by anyone. That means one who is a practicing devotee, one who is into devotion, or one who is an active person who just knows activity. Even these people can practice. That's the beauty of it. Now, before I continue, I'd like to say something from my side. It's very interesting. Be unattached knowledge is power, and getting one, you get the other. See, being a monk of the Ramakrishna mission, I'm naturally uh, given to a lot of exposure to the words of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. The inspired talks I read when I was pretty young in my monastic life. What is very interesting about this book is some of the statements from Swamiji stayed back, and a lot of things went somewhere deep inside, about which I didn't remember, and many more things got lost forever. By that I mean there were certain things I remembered vividly that Swamiji has said somewhere, and there are certain things I rediscovered on my own, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that Swamiji has said this. So maybe when I had read Swamiji somewhere, that might have gone deep inside my psyche, and after 20, 30 years, somehow it bloomed. And the third lot is that which I still feel surprised to read. Oh my God, Swamiji has said something like this. Naturally, you cannot remember everything that you read of any person, irrespective of who that person is. So, in case of Christianity, you may remember the Bible because it's a very small work, and we remember what is there in Gita. But when it comes to commentaries and all, you cannot remember every sentence. That's not possible. So, this knowledge is power, and be attached. Knowledge and power. Knowledge is power, power is knowledge. We discussed it in the previous class. Surprisingly, knowledge is also detachment. It also gives you detachment. Somewhere, detachment and power and knowledge, these are all linked. So many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, or maybe a little more, I was in one of our centers at Kanpur, and I didn't have much work in those days. And from monastic standards, I was pretty young. And I thought of writing a book. And that's when I also realized this thing that what is life? Life is about power. And we don't even realize that power is already there. You don't acquire power. These Western thinkers, the writers of positivity book, and these speakers who go on talking about positive thinking and power making, somewhere they make a mistake. The power is already there in you. But because you're holding on to the small or the smaller, you're not able to get the larger. This is, believe me, my dear listeners, my dear viewers, this is one thing I have learned in my life. Nothing like exposure. Nothing like exposure. Those of you who have gone to foreign countries, those who reside in America, Europe, and in some other country, you have more of exposure. Because you have more of exposure, somehow you have conquered that thing. Actually, when I was young, I was surprised by one statement from Swamiji. He said, downfall of India began the day it coined the term mlecha. Mlecha means non-Hindus. It was against the Muslims. And because Muslims were behaving in such a way from the time that they entered India, 8th century onward, that they came up with this term mlecha. And when Al-Biruni came to India in 10th century, he wrote vividly about this thing, that why Hindus have gone so much against the Muslims. Those of you interested can read that book, India, by Al-Biruni. And nowadays, when you find the nexus of a very small group of people who are continuously attacking Hindu religion, you know that somewhere there is a nexus attacking Hindu religion. Because either they want to discount the entire thing or they don't know, whatever it be. India was so fed up with this problem that it came up with the term lech, and traveling abroad became a taboo, a sin. When Raja Ram Mohan Rai went to England, he had one ship full of Ganga water, an Indian cook. When Swamiji went to America, there were voices raised against him. And when Gandhiji went to England, he was excommunicated. And he remained under excommunication throughout his life. When he died, he was not the member of his community. You can read his biography. So I used to wonder why. Why Swamiji said, because see, we grew up during the time and place where these things were still considered taboo. Interacting with people of other religions, and the focus was on purity. And suddenly comes a statement from Swami Vivekananda that we knew mlech was used also for people who stayed unclean. Earlier, I used to think that mlech means one who stays unclean. And actually, that is the idea when people of other religions were branded mlech. This is, it stopped interacting. When Swamiji said it stopped interacting, because you see, there is a direct relation between interaction and knowledge. Think of somebody who is living in a village. He thinks that the customs of the village, way of life of the village, is everything. And then comes a visitor who is dressed differently, whose habit of speaking is different, whose eating habit is different. Generally, he's laughed upon or frowned upon. Now, someone from the village goes out and then meets the first person who is different, and he kind of laughs from within. Then he meets more, and then he meets many more. And then suddenly he realizes there is a way different from their own. And then when he goes back to his village, he realizes no, there's a way of life which is different from ours. And there's nothing wrong with it. This person got knowledge, and thus he got power over the unknown. And unless you are unattached, unless you get detached from where you are or to whatever you are holding on to, you cannot gain this knowledge. And that's how. So I was thinking like this, and then it hit me. Okay, fine. So Swamiji had said about mlech and something about it's about gaining knowledge. And knowledge is related to power. Jesus says knowledge will free you. But according to yoga, power frees you, strength frees you. That strength comes from knowledge. And that's how I came up with this writing this work, Tia Parrot's Journey Home. Those of you might have read it, you know. So that is the concept. You come face to face with your emotions. Now you know what are those emotions. Once you know, you overpower it. How knowledge leads you to freedom. See, dear viewers, maybe I'm expanding it, I'm explaining it too much, but this is very important because believe me, this is the secret of every spiritual path. People don't realize it. If you study yoga, that is Raj Yoga, the science of spirituality becomes so clear, so scientific. And what is that? You focus your mind on some object and get to know what exactly it is. Once you gain the knowledge, you now have power over it. Once you have power over it, what happens? The thing gets discarded. This is what happens in Tia. Those of you who have read Tia, uh, I mean, you will be surprised that I never read my own books. Once it's published, I never turned my in pages of any of my books. Never. Because I like to think, I like to write down the thoughts that have been organized by me. But I still believe that as far as story is concerned, Tia is the best book till now that I know of, not from me, from any. It describes the spiritual journey. This exactly is how the spiritual journey takes place of every person, mind it, every person. Now Swamiji will be coordinating, or rather, he will be synthesizing all the different paths in these talks, in these 2 pages. Ultimately, just think it this way. Here is this world. You are attached to thousand things, thousands of objects. How to get out of it? You need to get rid of them. How do you get rid of them? By knowing them. But then it's not possible to know each and every subject in each and every object in this world, in this universe. Just not physically not possible. Yoga agrees. So what yoga does is it takes the top-down view and says that creation is actually fanning out. Creation is about complexity. Spirituality is about simplicity. When you move towards simplicity, that is spirituality. When you move towards complexity, that is the world. The world is ever expanding. As you move towards God, it keeps becoming more and more simple. it becomes more and more unified. And that exactly is what happens in science too. There is unification. If you want to know what is common between science and spirituality, the answer is unification. Science also tries to unify, and religion knows that unification is the truth. Not synthesis minded, unification. Everything has come from God and slowly diversifies, it becomes complex. Science takes a different path, religion takes a different path, nothing else. In top down view of the yoga, there is this Prakriti, which is the mother of all matter and all energy. And it comprises of three qualities, Sattva, Raja, Tama. Those of you who have listened to our Raj Yoga talks would know that. And ultimately, every object in this universe is made up of that Sattva, Raja, Tamas, nothing else. And Sattva, Raja, Tamas gives birth to five elements. Five elements that can be taken by our five senses. So, if there is a universe where there are beings with 10 senses, let's say, or eight senses, so they will talk about this top down creation in the form of eight fundamental matter, fundamental elements, sorry, eight fundamental elements. Because it's all about senses. When we know something, is the link between senses and objects. I request you, those of you who are more interested, listen to Rajyoga talks. The relationship between senses and their respective object. This is world. And you need to disentangle them. Now, this disentanglement can come only through knowledge. Knowledge is power. For what? To be detached. If you want to get detached, if you really want to get detached, this is the way and this is the only way. After explaining this, we can move more easily. With fundamentals clear, it's easy to proceed. By knowledge, you can even banish the material world. Now, here comes the crux. We had actually stopped here. See, I feel was a hurry. I mean, inspired talks of Swami Vivekananda. This is such an amazing work, and those who are interested in spirituality, they should read this book and they should meditate on every statement of Swamiji. See, Swamiji said, by knowledge, you can even banish the material world. Believe me, dear viewers, you won't come across such a statement in any of the Abrahamic religions beyond them. In Buddhism, you will come across Jainism partly. Vedanta is all about that, banishing the universe. Hinduism is also about that. Hinduism doesn't depend on going to the heaven after death. Hindu religion is an entirely different religion. It doesn't talk about something which no one can see, no one can prove, no one has ever seen. So, do Hindus talk about heaven? Definitely they talk. They talk about heaven for the lesser intellects. Higher intellect. Hinduism is the only religion which is meant for all kinds of intellect. Other religions are not. So we have people who worship trees and who worship stones and who will go on worshipping all kinds of gods and goddesses. Nothing wrong with that. Even Sri Ramakrishna was an idol worshipper. So what? As Swamiji said, if by worshipping idols we can have a Sri Ramakrishna, then I would wish that the whole world gets into idol worshipping. Anyway, these things are slightly difficult to grasp for those who are not deep into all this. Now, this banishing the universe is something very interesting. And I request you to listen to our Mandukya Karika talks, the second chapter. Second chapter of Mandukya Karika discusses Advaita entirely from logical standpoint. The idea is that you see objects in dreams. You see huge buildings. You might see that you are traveling by plane, traveling by train. Many of you see. And you might see that you are being chased by an elephant or by a tiger. And you meet people in dreams. And you have good dreams, you have bad dreams. You have happy dreams, you have sad dreams. And when you're in this external world, you find a lot of similarity. Mind it, not totality, similarity. And neurologists are still working on this. What is sleep? What exactly is sleep? Now, Vedanta will not go explain sleep. That's not their job. They will say, let us find the common ground of sleep and the waking. What is the common ground of sleep and waking? It's obvious. In both the cases, you are getting ideas. You are seeing human beings in dreams and you are seeing human beings in waking state. Now, how is waking state superior to the dream state? Can you prove it? That waking state is better than dream state? No, you cannot. There's no way you can. Absolutely, there is absolutely no way. Once I was reading a book by a very famous psychologist, actually psychiatrist, and he was telling his friend, a visitor, he was sitting in his office and suddenly one beautiful lady entered the office and said, "Oh, doc, last night I gave birth to three or five beautiful babies. So they're so healthy and they're so healthy, so beautiful, so cute." So this doctor congratulates that lady and she went away. Then the friend said, "Look, she's hallucinating, isn't it?" Then the doctor said, "Yes, this lady had miscarriage, and after that, she went bonkers. She lost her head, and since then, she has been dreaming of having babies. Some days she has one, and some days she has five, seven kids." And then the doctor says beautifully that, "Look, her world is far more beautiful than the world in which I will bring her back with the help of medication." So here is a dilemma for me: shouldn't I do it? Because once the doctor uses those medications, maybe she will come back to this real life. And in this real life, suddenly she will realize that there is emptiness. Well, these are very complicated things. Schizophrenic patients, split personality patients, hallucinating patients. They create their own world. And in their own world, if you read books by V.S. Ramchandran, particularly his Phantoms in the Mind, he goes on describing lots of things. To you, those descriptions, conditions of those patients may seem abnormal. But to him, these are all, or her, absolutely correct, absolutely true. So, what is common between, say, a hallucinating patient And a person like me who is wide awake, and a person who is dreaming, common thing is ideas. Whatever we know through hallucination, through dreams, through smoking pots, taking cannabis, and the waking state, these are all ideas, just ideas. And mind has the power to create ideas, as in the case of sleeping. And mind has the power to create idea, as in the case of hallucinating patient. Now, is some power that can create can destroy too. If the mind has the power to create an idea, it also has the power to destroy an idea. So here is this pen. Oh my God, this pen has become such a pet example. So pen is actually an idea which is present in my head. And once I have experienced this pen, I use this pen for writing. I use this pen for explaining to you. I use this pen for imagining things. And I see this pen in my dreams too. So pen as an object does certain work whose idea I get. And pen is also an idea which is present in my memory and can come in my dream, etc. Ultimately, pen is an idea. If pen is an idea, mind has the power to generate any number of ideas related to this pen or not even related to this pen. And that's how, creative people work. Great painters and great poets, they all work on that. Basically, they're insane in some form. Why insane? Because they do not see the world the way the world is. They separate their knowledge from what they are, and then they add extra dimensions to that knowledge. As in acting, a very good actor separates his emotions from himself and then reorients those emotions to create acting. That's what acting is. So how is great acting different from, say, hallucinating? No, you cannot say that. From the standpoint of mind, it is not. That's not our idea. That's not our goal. Our goal is, if mind can create, mind can also annihilate. This is what yoga does. It annihilates. It annihilates not with the help of some medication, not with the help of ganja and all, as people think cannabis, smoking cannabis or taking drugs. No. What it does is, it takes up an object, focuses on it, goes deeper, and masters its constituent elements, and the objects drop. The constituent elements remain. Oh, once while I was Devghar Ramakrishna Mission, so I found students, young boys, and they have funny habits. And whenever an idea catches up with them, all of them take up that idea and there is suddenly a storm of that thing moving. So once this idea took up, I was principal of Devghar in early 90s, and I had very friendly relations with those students. And whenever I would ask something, they would reply in impersonal way. So suppose, this is a real example. I asked, so what did you have for food? So instead of rice, you'd say carbohydrate. And instead of lentils, dal, they'll say protein. And once parent of one boy came and he was looking for his son. I finally met. He said, "Where were you?" I said, "Here." When I heard of it, this incident, I laughed. It reminded me of yoga philosophy because, see, well, something very obvious. There is something impersonal about place here because wherever you are, it is here. And then you add, in this particular campus, I was at that place. Instead, he says here. And instead of telling rice, he says carbohydrate. And I'm reminded of this yoga. But this is what yoga says. They were just being funny. And his father became extremely angry. He said, "Don't try to be funny with me." So, this is what yoga does. It removes the particulars and lets the general remain. And that general is again a composition, it's a composite. So it removes the particulars from that too. And ultimately, what remains is pure idea. This is known as Savitark, Savichar, Sananda, Sasmita. In Raj Yoga, you can know more about these things. So ultimately, it's an idea. And as the idea about the particulars is being removed, similarly, the idea about the general too can be removed. And ultimately, what is this universe? The universe is being taken by you simply as an idea, and the universe can be made to vanish. This banishment is not a magical trick. It's not a hallucination. It's not a hypnosis. It's not self-hypnosis. It's an actual fact. How do you get it? By knowledge. What knowledge? What this pen is made up of, and whatever it is made up of, what is that made up of? And then ultimately you reach pure idea and you get rid of it. Because as you focus more and more, your knowledge increases. As your knowledge increases, your power increases. As your power increases, your power to be detached increases. Mind it, knowledge, power, detachment. These are one and the same thing. If you are detached, you get more power. If you are emotional, you are more attached. And because you are attached, your power goes away. The moment you get attached, a boy gets attached to a girl gets attached to a boy. What happens? They get emotional. Once they get emotional, they think that they are getting power. But no, actually, they are losing power. They don't even realize it. Whatever one may be doing, however busy, there comes a message, there comes a call, and the other one runs. Now, you have lost your freedom. You have lost your detachment. But that is what happens with the world too. You want to have some good food. You want to have some good music. And you're running around. And only running around will not do. You will have to earn money too. But these are the crude examples we are giving. Things run at much subtler level. So, detachment, power, knowledge. These three are one and the same. The same idea I kind of repeated philosophically in my book, Carving a Sky. Detachment is freedom. Knowledge, power, freedom. Freedom means detachment. You're out of it. They are all related. It's such a wonderful thing. Like, I mean, Swamiji is telling you may appreciate it. I'm explaining it. You may appreciate it. But when you sit down, think, and work it out, you will scream Eureka, because that is when it becomes reality for you. You can go on listening to any number of talks by any number of Mahatma, and you can read books by any number of great prophets. Nothing is going to work till you start thinking over it yourself. Sit down, meditate, contemplate, take up those ideas which you love, and go on thinking, go on thinking, go on thinking. And suddenly you will see that the idea will reveal itself. From where? It will come out of the cloak of words. The words are like parda, words are like burqa. And when you start going deep into it, the parda moves away. The idea gets revealed. The beauty of idea gets revealed. The nature of idea gets revealed. Now you know. And because you know you have power, because you have power, you are detached, you are free. This is how yoga works. This is the way to yoga. All those, common things. You sit down and close one nostril and breathe in and breathe out and om. No, no, no. These are just aids. Actually, yoga is what we explain. I hope I have not been talking too much. Just let me see if there is any comment on this. Anyway, we don't have any. So, in case you are um, any special question or comment, you can ask. So, please understand it, my dear viewers, my dear listeners. You can see the joy in my face because I know I discovered it myself. The ideas from Swamiji must have been within me, but consciously it was not. And then when I realized that, oh my God, this is this. That knowledge, power, and freedom, that is detachment, these are one and the same. As you gain in knowledge, you have more power. So why is India suffering today? Why? Because we don't have knowledge. Whatever government may say about its literacy rate, we are really pathetic when it comes to getting knowledge. Just think of you dear listeners, those of you who are here. How many of you have read a good book in, say, the last 7 days or maybe even a month? Very few. Very few of you might have read, other than the routine things that you read. And think of India. When my first book came out, so I got introduced to the publishing world, and I was told that in India, if 5,000 copies of a book sell in a year, it's a more or less bestseller. 10,000 is confirmed bestseller. I got curious and I checked and I found in America, the bestseller means 15 lakhs, 1.5 million. In India, it's just 10,000. 10,000 copies sell and you're a best. Just imagine the pathetic plight we are in. Because we don't have knowledge. That's why we are suffering so much. Because we don't have knowledge, so we don't have power. We don't have power, we aspire for freedom. Spiritual freedom is a big cry. Forget physical. We have not yet even attained physical freedom. We have these some Naxals, Maowadis, they say, yeah, jhuti azadi hai. I don't know what exactly they mean by this. I never understand. What I mean by azadi is people are still suffering from hunger. We still don't have clean water. Government is trying. Government is trying, but the lack of laxity. The basic things are still missing. Literacy rate is poor. Love for learning is hopelessly bad. And yet we claim ourselves to be spiritual. We claim ourselves to be world teacher. So Neeraj, yes, Swamiji, there is a whole of treasure in this channel. Only thing it requires is more views. How are you planning to increase views? Sorry, sir, I don't have any plans because I believe in that serious listeners will come on their own. No, I don't have any plan to increase its views. Neither I have any idea how it's done, nor am I interested. None of my business. My job is to explain things. I'm creating knowledge bank of Indian wisdom, finished. Nothing beyond it. So when you can mentally get rid of one quality of after another from any object until all are gone, you can at will make the object itself disappear from your consciousness. This is what we discussed. Savitark and Sasmita and Sananda, etc. Savitark, Savichar, Sananda, Sasmita. See, sometimes I laugh at myself. When I was reading this Inspired Talks for the first time, I was barely 25, 5 years into monastic life. 25 years is too young to understand Inspired Talks and try to reading on your own. And when you listen to someone else, it's far more difficult to grasp because you need some maturity. Now, who was Swami Vivekananda? Don't forget, Swami Vivekananda was the sage coming from Saptarshi Mandal, from the seven sages. Sri Ramakrishna brought him to preach this world. And even if you don't accept that, you don't have to go for that. You just think of the amount of knowledge. He was a voracious reader, and he had read all the famous philosophers who were current in his time. He knew things. And above everything, he was into meditation. He was a big fiery horse, couldn't be reined by any. Sri Ramakrishna reined him and put him into proper spiritual channel. So that's why he could talk like this. He was just 32 when he was talking all this. Imagine, 1895. Swamiji is just 32. At 32, we can't even understand what Swamiji is talking about. Just imagine the power. So you can make it disappear from your consciousness. Now, the words are of Swamiji, but the idea is actually from Patanjal's Yoga Sutras. So, well, that's about yoga, way to yoga. And Swamiji says then, now Swamiji is explaining Yoga Sutras by Patanjali in very brief. And later he had full-fledged classes on Raj Yoga, which came out as a book. The book Raj Yoga is available, and it's in complete works of Swamiji. It's there in the first volume, and we have these talks. Those who are ready advance very quickly and can become yogis in 6 months. Yogis, by yogis, Swamiji meant that you get some faith, you make some advancement, not full yogis. The less developed may take several years, and anyone by faithful work and by giving up everything else and devoting himself solely to practice can reach the goal in 12 years. So you can see slowly the time span is increasing from 6 months to some years to 12 years. But believe me, dear brothers and sisters, my dear viewers, It may not be possible even in 12 births. We are so attached. We are so attached to happiness, misery of this world that so when you kind of decide to give up everything and go ahead, you may get it in 12 years. We had one senior monk, and he used to say jokingly, Swamiji says 12 years. I spent 5 into 12 years, but I have succeeded in nothing. So, some kind of joke because if you don't grow in spiritual life, you cannot stay in a monastic organization because a monastic organization has nothing to offer by way of enjoyment. The mind has to have some food, either spiritual food or worldly food. If you do not get something to nibble from the spiritual world, you need to have lots of worldly things because a monastic organization has nothing to offer worldly. You will have to leave, you will get out, you won't be able to stay. We have seen people who cannot stay. Now bhakti will bring you there without any of these mental gymnastics, but it's a slower way. Now this is again a very very interesting statement that needs clarification. First thing, when Swamiji say bhakti is a slower way, now this is not there in Patanjali, nor Swamiji has said directly in Raj Yoga. But if Swamiji says, Swamiji says. As I said, this is Ved. And bhakti will bring you there without any of these mental gymnastics. What is mental gymnastics? This is what we were discussing. In the previous talk, we had mentioned that there are 8 steps: yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So you have to go through first yam and then niyam, then asan, sitting quietly, pranayam, then dharana. The goal of all those exercises is just what we discussed in the beginning. And I request you people to listen to the first part of the talk again if you have time. How exactly yoga works. Whether it be a dream or hallucination or imagination or waking state, actual knowledge. We call it actual knowledge, but in dreams you forget that this is actual knowledge. Had it been actual knowledge, this knowledge would have continued in dream too. And had it been actual knowledge, it would have continued in hallucination state too. Anyway, ultimately everything is an idea. And the idea needs to be banished. How do you make it banish? Well, we explained the idea. Now, it says instead of going through that long, arduous process, you can take up the path of bhakti. Here, let me tell you one personal experience, some very, very interesting experience. As a young monk, there's a rule in Ramakrishna mission that after staying for 3 years, when you become a monk, you have to officially 3 years, you have to come for 2 years to Belur Math in the training center. Everyone has to stay, compulsory. And then you become a brahmacharian officially. You stay like that for 4 years and then you become a monk. So to get Gerua, you need to slog at least for 9 years. Now, when I came to Belur Math, that was my first exposure to spirituality, real spirituality. And what an exposure it was. Like from a comfort zone coming in front of blazing fire. Because when you join, most of your habits and ideas continue from the world from where you came. And the transformation is very, very, very slow. And once you come to Belur Math, our headquarters, where the training center for the brahmacharis is located, it's a very private area. It's given to studying and a regulated life, etc. Completely cut off from the world. But there you also come across many senior monks. You talk to them, you listen to them. So we heard a story about a senior monk who used to say that, see, these people, they want to be yogi and they have not even practiced yama and niyama. Essentially, yama are values and niyams are virtues. Values and virtues, these are different. Values are one must practice, and virtues are you practice to grow up. Satya, ahimsa, brahmacharya, etc. You can listen to the Raj Yoga talk. So I felt frustrated because you see, when you are young, you are extremely optimistic and you are eager. That's the right word. So when young people come to meet us, they feel as if they're so optimistic. They can have self knowledge, they can have Atma Gyan within a very short time, maybe 10 days, 15 days, if possible in 7 days. There's a story current in our own circle that one American gentleman took mantra diksha, initiation, from a senior monk, and after 7 days came and said he wanted to return that mantra. He said, "Oh Swami, I practiced it for 7 days, nothing happened with me." So that Swami says, 7 days. I've been practicing it for 40 years. And that American gentleman said, 40 years, wow. So there is no quick result in yoga or in spiritual life. So then I went to a teacher and asked that, look, what about this practicing yam, niyamasan? We don't do all that. And Swamiji had said that no, through bhakti also one can go. And actually, if you listen to our Rajyog talks, our Rajyog talks are well organized and in detail. So Patanjali explains lots of things and then he says, Ishwar Panidhana Dua. Ishwar Panidhan, you devote yourself to God. And that is bhakti. Swamiji just adds that it's a slightly slower way. That does not matter whether way is slower or faster. Ultimately, it's a way it takes you. What happens is when you're practicing values and virtues and sitting quietly, you're trying to bulldoze your mind into becoming uniform and unified. In bhakti, which is the path taken by every other religion, bhakti, every other religion, let's not even name them, they don't bulldoze because they know that if they try to bulldoze, things may go wrong. Actually, many heads go wrong by practicing yoga. Swamiji will also mention that. Yoga is extremely dangerous because it moves a bit fast. It kind of bulldozes. And They call it disruptive management nowadays. Not a good thing. Disruptive management is not a good thing. Management should always be constructive. In bhakti, what happens? You focus your mind more and more and more on your chosen ideal, the ideal whom you love. So for Muslim, that's a separate ideal, and for Christians, it's a separate ideal, and for Hindus, the ideals are numerous. As you move towards East, you automatically move away from the West. As you move more and more towards God, automatically you move away from the world. The idea is ultimately to make the world vanish. And a time comes when your mind becomes so preoccupied or so occupied with God that the world automatically drops away. Automatically. But it's a slow process. So every time people come to learn meditation, they don't even understand it. You don't need to meditate. If you develop this love for your chosen deity, that itself is more than enough. Oh, I'm sorry, we could complete just a few lines. Every day I come, I decide to to move a little faster. But then, anyway, thank you so much.